How do we challenge a dominant discourse, even when it is false? We do this by telling our own stories resolutely and truthfully. We know that Dr. Peterson's challenging of the Ontario's Human Rights Code was a red herring from the real issue that the bill was trying to address. Putting transgender people on the list of all other minority groups that need legislation to protect against persecutory, albeit sometimes subtle, but many times overtly violent hate crimes that are issued from dominant groups, one that Peterson himself belongs to. An aristocratic elite has shown itself to be a strong culture, nay empire, but not because of its cultural achievements. In the ancient world, while the wheat farmers in the West only had to labor 8 hours a day from their crops, East Asians spent 12 to 14 hours. The feet of my ancestors were still soaked in the rice fields, while their European counterparts were already at home, or drinking ale at their local pub. It is not the culture, Dr. Peterson. God blessed the children of Esau with rich land and prosperity, but that was not due to their merit. That was due to the merit of your ancestor Isaac. After the Industrial Revolution, European ships sailed across the oceans. Did it seek to bring prosperity and enlightenment to the world? No. Its goals were twofold: gold and proselytization. Europeans brought war and subjugation globally. Indigenous people in Canada were almost wiped out. The cultural genocide was perpetuated in Catholic-run residential schools, lest you forget, and we are still unearthing unmarked graves. These graves were unmarked because they could not keep up with deaths. Many Aboriginals live today, so many broken in spirit and body. They tell stories of sexual abuse, just like that which systematically goes on until this day in Catholic churches. This is the story of assimilation into your great Commonwealth. And what about the drugs with which the Commonwealth poisoned its colonies? The Native Canadians did not imbibe in any psychoactive substances except for peyote, and this was only in a ritual context. This is not until the Europeans brought them liquor. Alcoholism among natives has and continues to be one of the most prevalent and severe social problems, a problem that is the direct aftermath of your Western-centric worldview. How about the opium forced onto the Chinese? How about the Chinese railway workers who were paid half as much, put into more dangerous jobs, and when the time came for the railways to be celebrated, weren't even acknowledged that they had contributions? This is the story of assimilation into your great Commonwealth. This last story of the railway workers is very personal to me, because I had worked with you for 4 years, while you were still largely unknown to the world. I wrote countless letters encouraging you and supporting you, writing about the coming spiritual renaissance that I saw you capable of bringing about, the decline of the Western culture and its resuscitation, the fall of men, and how our research must correct for this. And so you continue to tell your story, one that is crooked and false as can be. A biblical series gained support from a large swath of the Orthodox Jewish community. How? Where? What Orthodox Jew could support such a blatant violation of our tradition, of our teachings, and our Torah? A man who ignores more than 4,000 years of a colossal body of work, one which struggles over every passage, every word, and every vowel point to arrive at the truth of the context cautiously, in a God-fearing way. Just like our 4 years of work ignore so much in the field of sex differences, and just like you, who have blatantly ignored the true meaning behind Bill C-16. As a convert to Judaism, I needed to find a new guide after you, Professor. I see your talk as nothing other than a resumption of more than 2,000 years of violent and genocidal subjugation. A silent Holocaust continues in Jewish communities in the West, a story of assimilation into your great Commonwealth. You're a great speaker, Professor. I wonder, as an academic, if I could ever speak like you. But as the Torah says, and Esau was a man who understood hunting, a man of the field, and Isaac loved Esau because his game was in his mouth. Esau was a great hunter, because he would entrap men with his mouth and deceive men with his words. You continue to promulgate this terrifying, deceitful tradition. Forever Peterson, who is hoisted up by this culture because of fame, glory, and money, and one word power, there are thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands like me, who are silenced, not because we don't have the truth, because the same free-speaking Commonwealth that you love keeps us quiet. And still, I agree with you, Dr. Peterson. The Western culture is indeed great. It has so much power and so much potential, and what I said years ago does not change a slight bit. But to wash away to wash away at its murderousness, at its shadow. That is not the right way. There is a way toward redemption. And that way is the way of Torah.